Oh, so what does God add? Well, he adds everything, doesn't he? And I expect there's no need for me to give this recording, because probably 2064E does exactly that. Look, it's that God does all. Everything that truly is, that's real, is in thought form to us. Here, if we're not thinking about it, it's not very real at the minute. There might be something in the environment that makes us think very much. I'm looking at a tree, that's a tree. And it seems very real, but it's passing. And if I then go and make a cup of tea, I stop thinking about the tree. I'm thinking about making a cup of tea and the things on the table in the kitchen. Reality is your thought world. And then, yes, someone might remind you of the tree. Oh, yes, yeah, get a good view of it from here, from the kitchen window, don't we? Yeah. It's all thought as regards what we're acting with in this universe. Where are your thoughts? You know, you close your eyes and you think, well, I'm thinking of Mum. Where is this thought? Well, I think it's in my head. But, you know, the Hebrew was thinking it was probably in his heart. He's thinking, he's locating it there. But it's anyone's guess. It doesn't seem to have a location. Location doesn't seem to be relevant to thought, just as values individually don't seem to be particularly relevant as to who's got them. It's very important as to who's got the values and who hasn't, but it's still the same value, and it could be had by 1 million people or nobody. But then there's still the thought, conceivably, of that value. It's not experienced until some life form is aware of such and thinking of such. But it's still a potential value, isn't it? Do you see, values and thoughts are almost independent of, for instance, whether you're now in this present or in a few minutes' time, you might still entertain the same value or the same thought. And in some sense, is it an identical thought that is actually different, or is it the same thought? Well, I sort of got the notion it's the same sort of entity anyway, and they're related and they match, perfectly, or they don't, in which case we classify it as a different thought and so forth. But if we think of where our thoughts come from, then, as we've said in the past, it's very difficult to say how we come up with thoughts. You know, I was thinking of a tree just now. Why did I choose a tree? I could have chosen the plant that I can see on my windowsill here where I'm sitting, that I'm growing one lavender one and another one that's right, rosemary. But I didn't. You could say because I was focused on the screen of my phone as I dictate, as I record. If all these words and thoughts that pour into our mind are of a common mind, anything but common, we mean common to all, but absolutely magnificently wonderful, what I will call the mind of God, then it's all God. Everything. If he stops thinking, we stop being. In fact, In a sense, we stop even having been, because he's not thinking of time either, and created time and matter and space and uncertainty and so forth, and you and me. So what does God add? Everything. God is the personification of the being of everything, and more. We have a notion that in some sense he is far more, but we don't know in what sense that notion might be valid. But we may choose to believe. We may choose to see him as something very handleable by our mind, for such gives the greatest blessing. Well, go for it then. Of course, go for it, if that's what gives the greatest blessing. And you'll see by experience whether this is true or not, and adjust your notion of the ideal accordingly, and where you're going and who you are. So what does God add? Everything. That's what inspiration is, isn't it? He drops it into your mind, and some thought, some idea, and you find you're inspired, you're motivated, and other things pour to mind, and you feel the fullness of life. We are creative beings, children of God, the Creator, and we're practicing creativity, both creating, making, and sustaining, loving. And in a very complex human way, we think of that in terms of kindness and godly purpose, noble purpose. God adds all the fantastic, and is the fantastic. Love you, Heavenly Dad. I just should say, I don't mean, of course, that the tree is not there if I'm not thinking about it. I'm just saying that the relevance of the tree being there is only in as far as I'm thinking about it. Of course, if I think it's not there and I drive supposedly straight through it, and the reality is it is there, well, the car stops rather sharply. And I'm now thinking of the tree, which is altered somewhat in shape, well, unless it's a particularly firm structure, in which case the car is altered rather more. It's imposed on myself to think about it. But much of the time the thoughts coming into a head don't seem to be imposed by anything particularly in the environment. I might be laying there in bed, with my eyes on the phone. Nothing's going to change particularly, and I'm thinking of, I don't know, Aunt Maud. Why did Aunt Maud come into my mind as the example? Well, I don't know. It just did. It could have been anything. I could have been thinking of matchboxes, but I wasn't. And why I've chosen that now, I don't know. Why did that come into the mind? I didn't call it. I was looking for something at so-called random. But what came was Aunt Maud and then Matchbox. And I probably won't think of either for the rest of the day, at least. Probably for a few weeks. Yeah. And something in the environment might remind me of such. A picture of Aunt Maud, say, I come across. I haven't got one. There isn't one as far as I know. Or it might be, someone's using a box of matches to light a candle. And I'm thinking, matchbox. Now, the ideal I'm not sure if I've said it here or elsewhere, but the ideal is, isn't it, that many thoughts at least, and all the major ones come from God. But we may be feeding our mind much more with the environment than we should, and bad company in the environment, by which I mean, well, literally bad company perhaps, but also media and things we're doing and so on may be very bad company for us. And that's the reality we're living in. Not good. By which I mean, by definition, if they're not good, they're not conducive to abundant life and life eternal. And that's what truly matters to us. All of us. We conceive of it in different ways, of course. According to our experience. And now we think according to the values we've got, according to our experience. But the reality to us is when we're thinking of it and how we're thinking of it. And I suppose I'm saying the obvious, very likely, but that we should take charge of what we're thinking, because it's having a good or bad effect on us. And therefore we want to, yes, be most reasonable in what we're thinking, but most reasonable in the sense of choosing that which really does give our overall benefit, because that's what we're truly concerned with. Or we will be. If we don't, we'll be crucially concerned with our benefit if things go wrong. So we make provision accordingly by thinking right. And to think right, well, we choose the good, where we have choice. And some things press on us very much. They've got to be dealt with now. And, well, if they've got to, we mean that our best interests are served by doing it now. So we do. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.